I'm sure you have all kinds of political beliefs, religious beliefs, or whatever, but I feel like you get to what you think is true based on really intense research. So for those people who aren't familiar with who you are, I want people to know who you are, and I want you to be widely recognized as the most important historian in the United States, because I think that you are.
The man former Fox host Tucker Carlson is heaping praise upon is Daryl Cooper, a Holocaust denier and a self-described historian who argued to Carlson's 13.8 million followers on X this week that millions of people in concentration camps, quote, ended up dead, not because of systematic genocide, but because the Nazis just lacked the resources to care for them. Mr. Cooper also claimed that the chief villain of World War II was not actually Adolf Hitler, but Winston Churchill. And again, Tucker Carlson believes that this individual is the most important popular historian working in the United States today. Today, New York Times opinion columnist Michelle Goldberg laid out exactly why this matters. The weakening of the intellectual quarantine around Nazism and the MAGA rights fetish for ideas their enemies see as dangerous makes it easier for influential conservatives to surrender to fascist impulses. Holocaust denial isn't really about history at all, but about what's permissible in the present and imaginable future, imaginable in the future. If Hitler is no longer widely understood as the negation of our deepest values, America will be softened up for Donald Trump's most authoritarian plans. Joining me now is Michelle Goldberg, opinion columnist for the New York Times. Michelle, this is such a smart piece. Everyone needs to go and read it online or in their hard copy of the New York Times. But I just want you to elaborate on why it's not just about Holocaust denialism, but you make the point that the abhorrence of Nazism has helped structure Western societies. Can you talk about that?
And that's actually what Daryl Cooper is going right at. Daryl Cooper and Tucker Carlson both. I mean, it's not just that they are pushing this revisionist idea of what happened in World War II, but they're saying that these kind of quote-unquote myths about World War II undergird the modern order. And so, right, because we have a rightful abhorrence of anything that smacks of Nazism, anything that smacks of fascism, ethnic cleansing. And so their argument is that they basically want to kind of undo the entire moral structure of the West
of the 21st, 20th,
post World War II. And so I think that's their very explicit project. And then, towards the end, Tucker Carlson says, well, why don't we have a Nuremberg trial for the people who allowed mass immigration, right? So they want that to be understood as a crime on par, if not greater, than the crimes of the Third Reich.
The attempt to normalize what happened during the Holocaust is so staggering, and it is being done in broad daylight. I mean, I will call everybody's attention to a tweet from Daryl Cooper, this historian that Tucker Carlson thinks is the most important living historian. A tweet where he compared Nazi-occupied Paris to the Paris of the opening Olympic Games. And he says, this may be putting it too crudely for some, but the picture on the left with Hitler and the Nazis in Paris was infinitely preferable in virtually every way than the one on the right, which shows, people celebrating the opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics. That was since deleted, but that sort of gets at the own the libs quality of all this revisionism.
Right. Well, I think that it's important to know that there is no troll quite like a Holocaust denier. In a lot of ways, yes. Holocaust deniers sort of set the template for modern trolls. Both the sort of like, well, I'm just expressing my opinion, and don't we have free speech anymore? And why can't we have an open debate about this? I mean, that sort of extremely tendentious, self-righteous, faux naive sort of approach, right. And also the use of shock as a polemical tactic. I mean, they were sort of doing this in the 90s, well before anybody had ever seen, 4chan or Pepe the Frog. And a lot of those kind of arguments that the far right makes, this is sort of their logical conclusion. And the only thing that maybe would have stopped them from going that far in the past were the taboos that, again, Daryl Cooper and Tucker Carlson are systematically trying to dismantle.
What's crazy, independent of this phenomenon, is the way in which it finds a home at the top of the Republican ticket.
Mhm.
I want to play J.D. Vance's response to Tucker Carlson's interview with Daryl Cooper. This is what the Republican vice presidential nominee had to say.
I believe, agree or disagree with anything that Tucker Carlson or his guests say, we believe in free speech. We believe if you don't like an idea, and obviously, you know, the Holocaust was a terrible tragedy, and it's something that we have to make sure never gets repeated again in this country. The best way, I think, to ensure, never gets repeated again anywhere in the world, certainly in this country or anywhere else, the best way to ensure that doesn't happen is to debate and push back against bad ideas.
Just to be clear, Tucker Carlson was not debating Daryl Cooper. He wasn't pushing back against Daryl Cooper. And J.D. Vance is going on Tucker Carlson's podcast tour starting September 21st.
Right. I mean, that's what and I don't think nobody is saying that Daryl Cooper doesn't have the right to, deny the Holocaust all he wants. I mean, thank God we have the First Amendment. But does he have the right to be 1 degree of separation away from the Republican candidate for Vice President of the United States, right? The very fact that, yes, Tucker Carlson, although he no longer has a show on Fox, he has not just one of the most popular, widely listened to podcasts in the country, but all sorts of ties to the highest levels of the Republican Party, and will soon be on stage first with JD. I think he's doing, it's like Alex Jones, JD Vance, and then a few days later, Donald Trump Jr., right? Basically, the Holy Trinity at the top of the Republican Party. And so I just think that the degree to which, I mean, in some ways this ties back to what you were just saying about Dick Cheney earlier, right? Those people, for all their many sins, had some sense of limits and patriotism and have been dethroned, and this is who has replaced them.
I wonder, the fact that, is it any kind of, comfort's the wrong word, is it any signal that the guardrails have not fully been demolished, that Daryl Cooper had to delete that tweet, that Tucker Carlson is getting some amount of public criticism, that J.D. Vance, though insufficient, but feels like he needs to kind of, not apologize for it, but put a finer gloss on it?
I think it's too early to tell, because yes, you're certainly right that there has been revulsion in a sense, among some conservative commentators that either this has gone too far or else they're like shocked that there's white supremacism going on in Tucker Carlson's orbit. But I think that what you see with Tucker Carlson over the years is he pushes and he pushes and he pushes, and sometimes there's like a little backlash, but the limits keep moving. And so if there is no real consequence except for some hand-wringing, and he still maintains the level of access to power that he's maintained up till now, it'll just be another taboo has been breached, and it's hard to recreate them.
It's amazing that they're engaging in Holocaust denial at the same time that Donald Trump is saying Jewish people are insane to vote for the Democratic ticket. You cannot have it both ways, dude. Michelle Goldberg, it is a piece that everybody should read this weekend. It's great to see you. Thank you
so
for your
much.
time tonight. We will be right back.